Hi guys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Kook Shed, my own little YouTube channel based around bodyboarding, surfing, and I share ideas, tips and reviews to hopefully help you out, save you some money and get you having more fun with your surfing equipment and out in the water. So today I want to talk a little bit about a tide watches. In particular, the Rip Curl Next tide watch. You might not use tide watch. You might just use, an app on your phone, or look the tide up on the computer or something. Or you might, I'm not sure, you might have some method that you don't need to look at the tide on your watch. But I have found that it can be handy if you're out at the beach all day, or you're out in the water and you just want to know what the tide's doing, how long it's got to go till low or high, or the actual height of the tide. So what happened was I had an analog Rip Curl watch that I bought, and I cracked the face of it, the glass face. When I sent it back to get repaired, I was told that model of watch was not made anymore, and I'd have to pick a replacement. So I picked out a Rip Curl Next tide watch. So I thought I'll give it a go, because my old one wasn't a tide watch. When I was younger, I thought a tide watch was pretty fancy. Back in the day, you'd get these big chunky Billabong and Rip Curl tide watches I thought they were pretty cool. And so I thought, well, I'll give a tide watch a go, seeing as though the one I wanted wasn't there. And I've found there's good and bad things about these. Now I should have known, because working at the surf shop there was a model before this, a Rip Curl watch before this. I think it was called the Rifles. It's an earlier model. And we kept getting them come back in for repairs and things like that. So I probably should have been a bit smarter in my choice of watch. But I thought, well, maybe this is a later model. Maybe they've fixed any issues that they might have had with the Rifles. Turns out there's still a couple of little things that could be done better. That's what I think. Firstly, I'll put up a picture of the watch, because I don't think the camera's going to pick this up very well. So here's a picture of the watch in question that I'm talking about today. Right, so that's the watch. Now, firstly, you can use the settings in the watch. Like there's already preset tides in here for places in the world, right? So you find a spot close to where you surf, or it might even be the very spot you surf regularly, and then you use that as your reference to tell what the tide's doing. Okay, so it's got a really good graph representation of the tide on the watch, and it's got really nice big numbers. And they're easy for me to read. So because I've got glasses, I just found it was easy to glance at this watch out in the surf and see what the tide was doing. So that I liked. I really like the presentation. I like the black. The numbers are light on a black background or a dark background, as opposed to the normal light background with black numbers. And I just found that was good for me. So it was easy to just glance and see what the tide's doing. It was easy to see. But I always found that the tide was never exactly right. Like I would cross-reference this tide just to make sure, just to see what it's like. I would cross-reference it with tides online. And this was always out by half an hour, sort of. So I had to sort of calculate while I was out in the surf. Because sometimes you're surfing a reef break, which is really particular with the tide, and it really matters, you know, how much water's over the reef and that sort of thing. So half an hour can actually make a big difference. So I spoke to Rip Curl at the shop, the Rip Curl shop, and they said, oh, you know, these online tides are usually a little bit out and rah rah rah. And I was like, well, I don't know. I think an online tide thing might be a little bit more accurate than something that's preset into this that you can't update. So you can't go on the net with this thing. Some other Rip Curl ones do have access to the net and they might be more accurate, but we're not talking about those today. So I just found it was never bang on. It was always out, okay? And one thing that I could never get to work was the heights of the tides. They were never correct with the actual heights of what was going on out there at the beach. So it might say, for instance, high tide is 1.2 meters in here, and the tide might be, I don't know, 0.9. It might be a really low high tide or something. I never could go off the actual height of the tide. See, it tells you when the tide's going to be low and high, but it also tells you the height in here. But I just found it was useless for me. So another thing was, if you don't have a spot in here, because they've got a pretty big list of spots that you can set the tide with. You just find a spot. You might be near Bells Beach, and you can set it at Bells Beach and it will give you the tide based on that. If there's no spot near you, or you want it to be more accurate, which I found I was having trouble with the accuracy, so there's a Spot X option, right? So you go into Spot X and you can set the tide. So you can go online and get an actual, this is what the tide is doing right now, and then you set it in here as Spot X, like your local spot, and away you go. But I still found that it drifted out. After, I don't know, after a few weeks maybe, it was out, way out. It was not reading correctly. So look, for transparency reasons, I'll say maybe there's something I'm not getting with this watch. Like, I looked at the manual, I read it, I followed everything. Maybe there's a setting I didn't do properly. Okay, so I'm open to being wrong, but I tried my best to get this thing to work properly, and it hasn't. I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't 100% satisfied with it. That's just me. Okay, so you know, you might have one and you might really like it. Maybe it works really well for you, but so far, yeah. Look, I've gone back to an old Casio. I love the old Casios because they're cheap and they work. Sure enough, it's not a tide watch, but until, like, I just check the tide on my phone now for a while until I get maybe a tide watch that's actually going to work. But until then, I've just been using an old Casio that just does the job. Another thing is, I've had a few issues with the display. I took it back to get repaired because the display, there was an issue inside the screen. It got sort of a little bit of mist or fogginess. Some water might have got in it. So I took it back, they fixed it, and they put a new battery in, and then very shortly after, the light stopped working. Like, it would come on and then go really dim straight away. So it'd flash bright like how it should be, and then it'll go really dim. Now I thought, oh, the battery that they've just replaced is dodgy, it's not working, but the watch itself is still going. So I don't know whether that's an issue with the light or whatever, and I don't even know if I'm going to bother taking it back again, because I just think there's going to be another issue. So it's a shame, because it's a nice watch, a nice looking watch, I should say, and it was okay there at the start, but yeah, after noticing that the tide, which it's you know, it's a tide watch, if it's not accurate for me and it won't even tell me how high and low it's going to be, well, it's sort of useless for me. Now, another one, I'm sorry to be so negative, I like to give positive reviews about things that I find are useful, but it might be useful to you because you can avoid it. The band's synthetic, right? So it's a rubbery sort of material. So it's quite strong and durable, but it doesn't breathe. I found like the watch that this replaced had a leather band. It's like a natural material, and it seemed to breathe a bit better. Whereas this is fully synthetic, and it doesn't breathe. Now I work outside and things. I get hot, and you sweat under there, and it can get really sort of uncomfortable. You've got to wash the band quite regularly because it just gets a bit feral, and so that's another thing. If you've got like skin issues or something, that if something like this might irritate you, that's something to keep in mind as well. Because I find after wearing it for a while, I have to take it off and sort of leave it off for a while because it sort of just it irritates me. It's just this plastic, so that's another thing to keep in mind. So if you've got one of these and it works great, good for you. I'm sorry to rag on your watch, but I just think there's a couple more things that could be done to get these watches working as they should. If you've had similar experiences with these Rip Curl Next side watches, let me know in the comments. If you found this helpful in picking a watch or not picking this watch, hit like, and if you want to hear more reviews, tips, ideas and things related to surfing and bodyboarding, hit subscribe, and I'll see you here next time on Kook Shed. Thanks for dropping in. Catch ya.